welcome back to the latest episode of the Big 12 Huddle. As your host here, I'm Calvin Glenn Alexander, part of the CGA Tour and the CGA Tour podcast, all about Oklahoma State sports. Tonight on the Big 12 Huddle, we've got Bob Trollsby, which is from Cocaine Willie, and the K-State podcast here is part of the College Huddle. Bob, how's it going?
It's going well. It's a Friday here for me, and just getting ready for a nice weekend. So this is a good way to cap off the work week for me.
Yeah, it's not bad here at all. We're kind of pre-recording this one before we put it up Monday night. So if anything happens between Oklahoma State and K-State, which we're not playing each other in any sport that I'm aware of.
No, not that I know.
If anything else happens over the weekend that seems crazy, you'll know why. We didn't talk about it. But well, that being said, here we want to basically talk about how we think the new Big 12 will shake down for both of us. Both of us can say, hey, our schools have been to the Big 12 championship in football in the past 5 years. You guys can say you've won it, which I did not see coming against TCU. Got to say, I mean, that was that was one of those where I go, okay, well, TCU's going to win, right? Like they were undefeated. They're going in, and then they've got that one loss, and then lo and behold, they make it all the way to the national championship. But yeah, we basically want to go through football, basketball, any other sport we think the Big 12 that we're going to basically just do really well, or maybe even do bad in. Always talks about the ups and downs, and then how we think the other Big 12 schools will fare as well that are being added in here as well too. So I'll kind of kick it off. Football wise, I mean, this year everything's on the up and up, right? There's nothing. I mean, hopefully Big 12 championship, where that's when we meet you guys, right?
Potentially. I think it's going to be a super interesting year for not just K-State, but definitely the new Big 12. I mean, being able to have 4 quality programs come in Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah is going to change the dynamic. It changes the geography a little bit as well by adding in the desert schools, or the 4 corner schools, if you will. But it's going to be a fascinating football season. K-State has continued to take the approach of trying to reload talent where you've lost it from the previous season. And we lost a handful of good starters, guys who have been around the program for a long period of time, guys like Cooper Beebe, who when we're recording this is prior to the NFL draft day 2, day 3, but Cooper Beebe's likely to go in the NFL draft day 2. As he's currently projected and slated. We've got guys like Khalid Duke who are no longer with the program, Daniel Green, guys who have been around for a really long time. It's going to be weird not having them around. So Kleiman has taken the approach of having to go back to the portal and fill in the gaps, while also relying on some younger talent that maybe had a year or 2 in the program so far, but hasn't quite developed into a starter. They're going to have the opportunity to come in next year and be able to start on day 1 or compete for a starting position, compete against some of these guys that he's going after in the portal. So it's going to be a fascinating year. I feel like this team is poised to make a run to the Big 12 championship. And whether we meet Oklahoma State there, whether we meet a team like, who knows, Utah is not someone we face on the schedule, who has had a track record of success the past few years in the Pac-12 coming into the conference. It's going to be very, very interesting. And I guess the thing I'm most excited for is seeing quarterback Avery Johnson, young guy, true sophomore. What is he going to do with some of the weapons we brought in this past offseason? We brought in a wide receiver with a couple 1,000-yard seasons from Kent State, who then transferred to Penn State, was playing with an anemic offense at Penn State, decided to reunite with his former wide receivers coach in Matthew Middleton, who's now at Kansas State. He's going to be an interesting weapon. Keegan Johnson's another guy you're going to hear about a lot in the wide receiving core for K-State, who transferred in from Iowa last season, was injury prone, didn't really see a ton of time, but we saw some flashes like in the Texas game last year in November and towards the end of the season. So I really like what Kleiman's done this offseason to reload talent at certain positions, to up-level the talent that we had in the receiving corps specifically, because that was a weaker position group for us last year. And there's still some positions of need. There's still some guys we're going after on the offensive line. We've got an Arkansas guy. We've got a Tennessee guy on the defense who we're going after right now. We've got some campus visits lined up for some quality transfers from the SEC, even, which is not some recruiting waters that we're traditionally have been swimming in. So it's been great to see us a lot more competitive in that regard. on the football side in the portal in ways that we haven't been in the past.
Yeah, I got to say the Avery Johnson start seems interesting. Of course,
Yeah,
this last year, Oklahoma State we won, but barely. But the year before, we got well introduced to Will Howard, and I mean that was a game that I'm going to erase from my memory, hopefully forever. I know I had enough to drink that I should have erased it, but still seems like it's fresh in my mind. Yeah, that 48-0. And then this year, of course, we back-to-back weeks, Oklahoma State, we play Utah and then we play K-State. Fortunately, the only saving grace of those is that Utah's at home and it's the first matchup we have in the Big 12 this season. So first conference matchup there. Hopefully we can do kind of well, but who
get it
knows?
out of the way early.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those where, oh yeah, early season losses don't matter that much, yada yada, all type of stuff. Well, I hope that is the case because frequently we have to play OU at the very last game of the season. No one in the Big 12 really is dominating and winning the Big 12 like OU did before they left, at least in football for the past couple of years. And so it's one of those where, hey, last year we beat OU and just kept rolling and made the Big 12 championship. We'd love to, you know, be undefeated, but then again, I'm kind of looking at it from just basically just, hey, how do I think we're going to do? And at the end of the day, we do have one thing that's really working for Oklahoma State really, really well that I don't think is being talked about just a ton. And that's the fact that our receiving core last year was just injured.
Mm-hmm.
There is there is all the hype in the entire world amongst this Oklahoma State team in football. I mean, there is hey, we should be competing in the Big 12 every single year now that, OU, the little brother of, the Big 12 for everyone that everyone beats every single year. And then Texas, who I'm not even being sarcastic in this one, we do beat. I mean, like everyone was beating Texas. They weren't making Big 12 championships year after year. In the past 10, they made 2 or 3, just the same as Oklahoma State there. But with that being said, it's like, okay, you know what? I think this is Oklahoma State, K-State's conference. And there's all this hype about Ollie Gordon. Like, Ollie Gordon could be the best running back in the Big 12. It's probably debatable. But as a true orange tinted glasses guy, Ollie Gordon's the best running back in college football. I'm proud to say it. But I think that receiving group for Oklahoma State's really has to come to light because now there's no hiding it, right? No one's going to go, oh, I wonder what they're going to do on offense. It's like, yeah, they're probably going to run the ball. They brought every offensive lineman back from last year, and Ollie Gordon came back, which thank goodness. And then, oh yeah, their quarterback's like 30 years old, almost my age at this point with the fact that Alan Bowen's been in college. I think this is 7th or 8th year.
Yeah,
Uh,
7th, something like that.
Yeah, so he's getting up there. It's, I mean, one more year than I did, plus you. But at the same point here, are we worried about any other teams besides Utah, and of course each other?
I am, when I look at K-State's schedule, teams that I get concerned about, we're playing them in a non-conference, I use air quotes, game, Arizona, based on the year that they had last year and based on the guys they've kept in the program and have staved off Washington. They've staved off other interest from other programs to keep guys like Noah Fafita around. But that's a team that scares me. We play them in the second or third game of the season in a non-conference, quote unquote, matchup. Granted, it's a home game, so it's in Manhattan. So we have that going for us. It's going to be their first time making that trip to Manhattan that I know of. But they're a team that scares me. I just don't know that we know how good their head coach is. I don't know that we know how good some of the guys that they've kept around are, with the exception of Fafita. So I'm going to be interested to follow that program the first week and throughout the fall camp and the off season to get a better understanding of what they're working with and where some of the smoke might be for who's going to be a difference maker for them. Another team that is going to be sneaky good and scares me every year for the past 2 years and never prior to that is the University of Kansas Jayhawks. They are returning Jalen Daniels. They are returning Devin Neal, who, when you talk about Ollie Gordon, yeah, he's probably a top 3 to 5 running back in the country. No orange tinted glasses here. He's a top 3 to 5 running back in the country. He's number 1 returning running back in the Big 12, I think, bar none. Devin Neal is 2 or 3 on that list. And I would say DJ Giddens is probably 3 to 5 on that list in the Big 12. But they can be good. I'm going to be curious to see how much of their success relied on Andy Kotelnicki's offense now that he's gone, now that he's at Penn State. They went in and brought in Jeff Grimes from Baylor, and I don't know how successful I feel like that's going to be. He wasn't great at Baylor with the exception of that first season when they played you in the Big 12 championship game. And I mean, we can look at Dave Aranda's track record at Baylor too. Outside of that first season, it's been really hit or miss for them, and mostly miss. So I don't know how much confidence I will have in that offense and scheming, because Kotelnicki's known for being kind of an outside of the box thinker when it comes to scheme and integrating some of that triple option offense that they integrated. I don't know what we're going to get from them, but they return a lot of those key position players, including Jalen Daniels, who, if he's not injured for a majority of the season, he can have a significant impact on their ability to win games. If they had a wins above replacement stat for football, he's probably going to contribute to a handful of wins that they wouldn't have had without him if he's healthy. So when I think about teams on our schedule that I'm concerned about, it's probably Arizona, it's Kansas. Those are, and I mean, obviously Oklahoma State, Utah's not on our schedule. But when we look at teams that have had a good track record of success, who have won games and been to conference championships, Oklahoma State's obviously on that list too. Gundy has proven that his floor at Oklahoma State is 7 wins, 8 wins year in and year out on average. So that's kind of in the same ballpark as Kleiman, with the exception of the COVID year for Kleiman. Another team that's kind of a big question mark for me is Iowa State. I never really know what to expect from them. Are they going to be good or not? You tell me, Cal.
They are the other team. If there is a team in the Big 12 that I dislike more than any other team now that still is in the Big 12, it's hard for me to say, oh man, you brought up Baylor and Dave Aranda. That's definitely up there, but I think Iowa State's got to be number one. That 2011 game will always be just a sad day to look back at. And then, last year, like, what are we doing? I mean, I do have a couple other points, but I know I keep asking you questions here, but I just want to ask, what did you guys think when we were playing a 3 quarterback headed system for 3.5 games of the year? Was there like, hey, okay, Gundy will figure it out, or what was going through other Big 12 fans' minds?
So just quick plug for Cocaine Willie. Every week before a football game, we have a guest on from the opposing team that we're playing that week. So last year we had on Philip Slavin, who helps run the 10-12 network. Super smart guy, loves his cowpokes, right? And this guy comes onto our pod. It's week 4, week 5 we're playing you guys. And he gets on and he says, I have no faith in our ability to win this game. Mike Gundy can't even decide whose quarterback's going to be. So we're walking into this Friday night matchup thinking, we're going to boat race these guys. I know Stillwater's kind of a house of horrors for us for recent memory, at least, but I was going in overly confident in K-State's ability, knowing that Will Howard to that point had played fairly solid. And then he just has the worst game that he's had since his sophomore season, 2021 in that game. And it was just, everybody was calling for Avery Johnson. We didn't see him play until that next week against Texas Tech when he had 5 rushing touchdowns, but everybody's calling for Avery Johnson at halftime. We're like, yo, what's going on here? How are we getting beat by a team that can't even decide who their quarterback is? And lo and behold, you ended up kind of sticking with the hot hand during that game and following that game, and he's your quarterback again this year. So who knows, man? We were all pretty confident going into that matchup. And we were all very disappointed in how that game turned out, because realistically, if you win that game, you're going into a matchup against Texas. That's the only loss that you have at that point, with the exception of Missouri, which was an out of conference game. So really it didn't matter as far as Arlington was concerned. So that was the game that we all looked back on at the end of the season. We're like, what the hell happened there? That was unacceptable. But looking back on it, we lost to a team that made the Big 12 championship. That's not like a slouch of an Oklahoma State team by any means. I think we all just underestimated the team, and we were looking at the results from the non-conference game that you dropped. And it's just like, well, this is, I don't know. Maybe they just had an off night that night against, what was it, South Alabama?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The OU fans that are friends of mine that went to high school with that didn't go to OU, they all know we lost to USA because that's University of South Alabama. We lost to USA. We couldn't beat them. Or then when we do beat USA, it's like, how dare you? But at the same point, we that game, Ollie Gordon has 9 carries, and it's been the Oklahoma
Yeah.
State knows that that's a game where Gunnar Gundy led the team in passing yards. Elijah Collins, who? And respect to him, he's entering the NFL draft. Who knows if he'll get drafted or
Yeah.
not? 7th round draft pick at running back. Who knows? But these guy transferred in, basically, is what I'm saying, and just didn't have that much going. There's a lot of like, okay, what were we doing? Like, if you just play one quarterback that whole game, I think we're fine. Against South Alabama, we scored 7 points against them, and I think they're a D1 team, so that's put it nicely, right? Like, there are several things that made me think, oh, there's no way we beat K State. I remember that was the first game last year that I went to in person was the K State Oklahoma State game, and I go, yeah, I don't know if I want to talk to my dad on the drive up about this one. It just was one of those where it's like, I got a feeling like we could do something a little weird. It's Oklahoma State, like you said, it's Boone Pickens Stadium. Basically, all the fans are on top of you, and something can happen. Something can break our way. But then at the same point, you're like, well, I'm not confident though. We last week we lost to Iowa State. The week before, then we lost to South Alabama, and the week before that, we barely beat Arizona State, who looks like they're in a complete turmoil.
Yeah.
So to agree with Slavin, there's no way that I had any confidence going into K State, but then leaving that game, it's like, well, yeah, okay, we see something could work out, and then that's really where it's maybe Alan Bowman was not brought in as like a veteran presence. Maybe the 9 passes he threw at University of Michigan over like 4 years was just some rust he had to ding off over the first 3 games and the whole
Sure.
stuff. And so that's where we're going ahead in this season. Is all right. We have everyone. And then we also have the 4 and 5-star wide receivers of Deshaun Stribling's just one to name, who were injured last year, just didn't make it down the stretch. I mean, there's a guy Rashad Owens, who incredible receiver for Oklahoma State, but he's played like every single type of position at receiver. He's played slot, he's played he plays out wide, he runs crossing routes, he's doing all types of stuff. But by no means is he like going to get drafted day 1 next year in the NFL draft. I mean, he's not that kind of guy because he's not really seen the field that much. And Oklahoma State has great receivers and has a history of it. But there's a lot to be said for, could our offense be even better? Could our offense just at least start off really well this year? And that's the big hope. And that is the hope, because week 2 is Arkansas at home. And I haven't done the full offseason scouting report on Arkansas and everything, but I know a couple things. I know, 1, they're SEC, and 2, they're never easy to play. So we'll see how September 7th rolls around, and it's like, okay, wait a second, the football season started and we've got to play Arkansas. That'll be fun. And great, other teams have other tough non-conference opponents. Arizona, their quarterback's getting Heisman buzz. So
Yep.
I'm not trying to say we have it worse than anyone else, but this year will really be a make or break it, because we get all our tough games or tougher games out early, and then we finish up the season with Arizona State, who we get to play for the 3rd year in a row, thank goodness. We also get to play BYU, but we have to go there. So we'll see. I mean, there's the TCU and the Texas Tech that are never easy because their coaches are just real smart, real good guys. But then we end the season. This is the team I want to ask you about. We end the season against Colorado. We have to go to Boulder, which I'm not worried about going to Boulder. I mean, I think our players will probably be like, "Oh, this is great. We get to,
Right.
see all this new scenery and do whatever." But they have 2 guys on their team who can get drafted in the first round. I mean, the quarterbacks, Sanders, Deion's son, I guess his last name's Sanders too, and then Travis Hunter. Those guys are probably going to get day 1 draft picks. And do you guys play Colorado this year? Are you
Me
confident at
too.
all? Like, yeah, yeah. What do you think about Colorado? Because to me, they are the complete. They might be 6-6, but I would hate for one of those 6 wins to be against us.
I feel the same way. I don't know. So and for those of you who are listening who don't know this, I live in Denver, Colorado. So I get a lot of the Boulder media and Denver media talking about Dion on a near daily basis, if not hourly basis. And I follow through conference realignment and stuff. My handle's Bob Trollsby. That's a joke, but Bob Bowlesby was the commissioner of the Big 12. I've been really in the weeds with conference realignment Twitter for the better part of the last 3 years now. And when they joined the conference, I followed a lot of those Colorado writers who were, there was quite a bit of smoke out of Boulder prior to there ever being any smoke from Arizona, Tucson, or Tempe. And all the Dion stuff, I mean, you are hard pressed to find someone who's critical of him out here, because I think they're just excited to have a team and be competitive from a recruiting standpoint right now. And having the talent that they have, I mean, Shedeur Sanders is a bona fide talent. Like him or not, or like his dad or not, he is a bona fide talent. He will probably be a first round draft pick because the dude threw for 3,000 plus yards last year. And that was with one of the worst offensive lines in D1 football. And what's fascinating to me is thinking about the way that they use the portal. And they just willy nilly, they'll tell a guy, hey, you're not going to make the team this year. Go get in the portal. And they're okay with it. They're okay with taking that approach. But I guess it works when you're getting guys from Texas and other schools that are high caliber talents and high quality programs that are sending you guys in the transfer portal because they want to play for Coach Prime. They may only play there for a season and then get back in the portal, but I don't know how good they're going to be this year. They play us, they play you. They've got a fairly tough conference schedule, and it's going to be interesting to see how some of these teams that haven't made the trip to Boulder, how they adjust to the altitude. I think that's going to be an underrated thing that not enough people think about or talk about this season, because when I think about K-State making 2 trips to BYU and Boulder back-to-back games this season, I believe it's back-to-back games, but we have a bye in between. We play BYU, then Oklahoma State, then Colorado. So relatively tough stretch of games there, but you're going to altitude 2 out of 3 weeks in a row, essentially. It's going to be interesting to see how K-State handles that, and if they learn anything from the experience going to BYU and playing a game in Provo, coming back to Manhattan, how they prep for that, how soon they get to Boulder, how soon they're able to get to Boulder and acclimate. I don't know how that's going to play out, but I think teams need to keep that in mind when they're prepping for this, because you're going to have teams that have never made the trip and guys who have never even played at altitude before making that trip and doing that. Because I would imagine a lot of these guys on these teams have never even made it to Colorado to begin with, because they come from Texas or Florida or wherever, and maybe they didn't get the opportunity to travel like that as a kid. So I don't know, man. All the smoke out here is that Prime's going to figure it out. They've got all the talent in the world, and maybe he's like a roll the ball out there kind of coach. We'll see. I don't know if that's the case. He's out here talking and chirping and saying that the talent in the Big 12 team wise is not good enough. So I don't know how. I think he's talking the talk, and I don't know if he's going to walk the walk at the end of the day. But K-State's going to have visitors soon from Colorado, who was a guy that committed to K-State, then decommitted, then committed to Notre Dame, then decommitted, then committed to Coach Prime after he got the job out of the 2023 class. He was in Avery Johnson's signing class and played with Avery Johnson as, in like Pee Wee. So they played through middle school together. And we may be picking him up. It's between us and Nebraska and A&M right now, so we'll see. But I'll happily take some of these Sanders recruits. There's another guy that Coach Sanders pushed out that we have who's a tight end for us right now. So I don't know, man. I'll take his sloppy seconds. He's got good talent.
Yeah, that's the one thing that's going to be really hard for me to understand is the Colorado scheme. And just because, okay, you can go
New
in,
OC, yeah,
and then just all of a sudden be, oh wait, what are we playing now? What's the deal? What kind of offense? What is the defense going to stop a nosebleed, or are they going to stop a freight train? I mean, really, week to week, who are you playing with and stuff like that?
And if they're getting 28 guys from the portal right now who haven't been in spring ball, what are they going to do? They're not gonna. They're gonna have to learn the entire playbook over the summer and during fall camp.
That doesn't
Good
give
luck
you
with that.
a ton of time. Yeah. Yeah, there's several things that I wish the Oklahoma State program did a little bit better. Of course, you're a biggest critic of yourself and the teams you follow, but not having a spring game is, I think, a blessing and a curse. We just,
Mhm.
I mean, it could be a big attention draw, it could be cool, it could be bad or whatever. But I vividly remember the Colorado spring game last year being
Yes.
sold out. I
Yes.
remember I used to work in ticket sales for a while. I remember working in ticket sales with a couple guys who go, "Oh no, I'm buying all the Colorado spring game tickets." I'm like, "How much are they?" "They're free." And he's reselling them for $10 a piece. I mean, it was just like there's so much hype, so much excitement, all these
Yep.
guys on the sideline, but this is the team Oklahoma State would lose to. Like, this is
Yeah.
the picture perfect, painted on the, team. Last year, we almost lost to BYU. They were almost the team we lose to. Picture perfect, painted. So it's bizarre to me. I have a ton of confidence in my team, ton of confidence in my school of doing the right thing. But then again, I've seen so much. I'm like, okay, I know what a loss looks like. I know what a
Yeah.
scheduled loss looks like at this point. That going to Colorado, doing all that type of stuff could be bad. Now, I'm really curious how, like, UCF does, because I think they are going to Boulder this year. It's
KJ too, coming in from Arkansas, and he's sneakily going to be one of the best transfer portal quarterbacks of this cycle. And Malzahn has done a great job recruiting there. They consistently get 4-star guys. They consistently get talent from the SEC and the transfer portal. KJ not being the only one who's part of that. They're going to be sneaky good this year. I think if people are placing bets on who their dark horse might be this year, I think if we go back the last few years, 2 years ago, it was K-State. They ended up making the Big 12 championship. Last year, all the hype was around Texas Tech. They ended up not quite delivering on that. I think this year that conversation is going to be around UCF, if we're being perfectly honest.
Yeah, I think it could be too. And I had that flipped. Colorado goes to UCF, goes to the bounce house.
Okay.
I would at that point maybe say it's a scheduled loss because of how we played UCF last year. But as long as we don't have the one game a year now, which would make it 3 years in a row if we do, where we just forget to show up to the game, um, we could be doing pretty darn good. See you guys again in the Big 12 championship. But our schedule favors in a way where we don't face Arizona. Um, is there a team besides Arizona State? Because I'm just going to knock it out of the way early because Arizona State guy told me that you think is going to be the bottom of the Big 12 this year.
Oh, it's
Uh,
Cincinnati, without question.
all
It's
right.
Cincinnati. I mean, I have been pestering Cincinnati fans for the past 6 months, 7 months since football season last year started about every game I watched. Scott Satterfield looked like he had a relatively decent amount of talent. I don't think Emory was horrible at quarterback, but he wasn't great. There were just multiple situations where I could tell coaching was a problem. There were multiple situations in the red zone or near the red zone where they were not making the right play calls, or they just couldn't quite figure out what had been working during that drive previous to getting to that point of red zone or near the red zone. And then they just decided to do something completely different that didn't work and wasn't remotely successful. And I think back on that Oklahoma game, they had a very good shot to win that game. And then they just blew it. They just completely blew it. They're playing at home. I want to say it was their first Big 12 conference game was OU on the road in Cincinnati or something, or it was earlier in the season.
No, you
And
had that exactly right. It's the first one is OU
yeah.
wins 20-6. Cincinnati.
How do you only score 6 points in that game when you had multiple red zone opportunities, or maybe it wasn't red zone opportunities? I don't have the stats in front of me, but there were multiple times where they were on the Oklahoma side of the field and they had opportunities and they squandered them. And it was just mind boggling to me watching Cincinnati play some of these games. It still blows my mind that they took a coach who was going to get fired by the other school that he was at, Louisville, and they hire this guy thinking that he's going to continue with the success that Luke Fickell had. And they did okay the first year as far as getting talent there. and retaining a little bit of the talent they had from the CFP team. But man, they were an incredible disappointed for me last year. I think seeing them come in for the first year and watching what they've done this offseason, the kid that they got from Indiana was not a great quarterback. I don't think they're even remotely moving in the right direction. And I'm very pleased to announce that Cincinnati's on our schedule this year in late November, right before we play Iowa State. So we've got Arizona State and Cincinnati back-to-back games. Oh, well, and Houston too. So who knows how good Houston's going to be? Probably not great. That we've got that 3-game stretch in November prior to playing Farmageddon. So I'm pretty excited to see how the second half of the schedule shakes out. Similar to how you feel about Oklahoma State's schedule the second half. Iowa State's always going to be a weird game regardless. And then we play KU before that stretch of games as well. And that's going to be a tough one. That might be the toughest Sunflower Showdown that we've had in years, and we've been saying that for 3 years now. So, yeah, Cincinnati's definitely who I would project to be 16th out of 16 teams if gun to my head right now.
Yeah, I got to say, I'm not high on them at all. Although I do think Houston, Arizona State, I think could rival them for the worst team in the 12. Yeah, I mean, I could talk about that Cincinnati OU game for days because I remember checking the score several times and going, wait a second, could this happen? And then it doesn't. I mean, just
yeah.
I mean, how do you have 40 more rushing yards than OU and you still lose and you had one time possession by 5 minutes? But regardless of just beating up on Cincinnati and their fans, I think in football, we'll probably hopefully face each other again, have the rematch of we got to find a term for the Oklahoma State versus K-State matchups because I mean, you're mentioning here Farmageddon, Sunflower Showdown, Oklahoma State, K-State. There's got to be like land grant schools, something.
Yeah.
So you got to figure that out here. We got to brainstorm a little bit here while we have time. But with that being said, here we also got basketball, and that's something that it's not comparable between our two universities right now at all. And I mean, Jerome Tang has taken K-State to new heights, I would say, at least in my mind. I mean, growing up Big 12 Oklahoma State fan, of course, I remember, you get number 1 overall draft player, like, draftee out of K-State. Like, that doesn't happen every single day.
No.
Then you got a while longer, and Oklahoma State has a number 1 overall draft pick and Kate Cunningham, but that was very circumstantial. And the two programs have just gone in opposite ways basically since those times. I mean, I know K-State, there was a little bit of a gap where I was like, wait, what are they doing? But then again, that's kind of when we had Travis Ford where we weren't doing that great either. And then we have Mike Boyd not doing the greatest. What do you think about K-State going forward here in the new Big 12 with the basketball?
I mean, the new Big 12, say what you want to say about it from a football standpoint. I do think the football side, there's a lot of parity there. Maybe there could be some separation that happens this year on the top end. I'm not sure what that middle is going to look like. And then the bottom, I think we know who the 3 teams are that are more or less going to be projected towards the bottom, like we've said. Basketball, show me a bad team in basketball, especially now that West Virginia has their guy. Oklahoma State has their guy. There's not Arizona State might be Arizona State and Colorado. Are those going to be the worst? Utah? And all 3 of them were bubble teams, if not at least making the tournament the last 2 seasons. So they're doubling down. They're only getting harder. We're playing a 20-game conference schedule starting next season. As far as K-State standing in that is concerned, I've seen what I need to see this offseason from Tang and the coaching staff from a transfer portal standpoint to get the right talent, at least visiting, if not committed to K-State. As we're recording this earlier today, we got a commitment from Brendan Housen from Villanova, sharpshooter, 3-point shooting guy. He's going to come off the bench. He only averaged about 15 minutes a game, but he's the kind of guy who can come in. He makes 2 or 3 threes per night, only averages like 6 to 9 points per game. But if you get him in the right system and you get him in a situation where you need a 3 to get some momentum coming out of a timeout, put him in there, sharpshooter, get it done, get some momentum going your way. Who knows what can happen with that? We've not had a guy like that in a long time. And Marquise Noel was not an off the bench guy. So I'm kind of making that comparison. We've never really had a 6th man, at least that I can think of, who was a sharpshooter, at least since the probably the Frank Martin era, if we're being honest. But I feel good knowing that we're bringing in good talent. We've got commitments from Doug McDaniel, who is signed. He was at the time he was a top 10 player in the portal. I think he's 11th or 12th according to On3's consensus right now. Very, very good player, guard. He left Michigan, which, solid program as far as the talent that they're able to recruit and attract to that school, blue blood type of waters as far as talent's concerned. And some of the other guys that we're going after right now, we've got Clifford Omori, who's on campus this week. We've got a couple other guys, Khalif Battle or Caliph Battle. I believe his name is actually pronounced Caliph Battle, from Arkansas, who's an Eric Musselman guy, leaving the program, not sticking around with Calipari now. He's on campus this week as well. Sounds like we're in the waters for a couple other guys, but I feel great about K-State basketball. This past season was disappointing, certainly, and being a bubble team with the amount of talent that we had with Arthur Kaluma, with Tyler Perry coming in the portal, and then bringing in three guys with RJ Jones, Day Ames, and Caleb Rich, who were really solid 4-star guys that came in as true freshmen last year. I was definitely disappointed with how the season went. There was some other stuff in the background with Naquan Tomlin getting dismissed from the team, and the team was really built around Naquan Tomlin for the most part, and trying to build the offense around him with going more of a 5-out style offense. That didn't shake out the way that we all thought it would. And being a bubble team was better than I think the team probably should have been. They won some games they probably shouldn't have won against some good talent like KU. And it is what it is. There were definitely some clunkers of games. We lost to Oklahoma State in a matchup we probably shouldn't have lost. We lost to Texas Tech in a matchup that came down to the final possession and just didn't close out those games, which was disappointing, because if the ball bounces a different way in those two matchups, you're looking at a 10-9 conference record, I believe, or 10-8 or 10-7. I forget. I don't know. Whatever it is, you're looking at a much better conference record. You're above 500. You're probably making the tournament. So it was frustrating how the season panned out, but Tang has made the adjustments. He's gotten the right talent in the door. He has also doubled down on the NIL front, which is only attracting better talent. And he's hoping to have this recruiting class wrapped up within the next week, which previous recruiting classes under him in the portal haven't wrapped up until October in some cases. So things are looking much better. I feel a lot better about the standing going into a much tougher Big 12. I would hope that we're top third in the conference next season, and I think he's doing what he needs to do to get the team positioned for that.
Yeah, I gotta say, they're hearing you all very excited about the basketball program and doing this, that, and the other makes me envious. And definitely jealous here for sure, just because we're in a different spot. I mean,
Yeah.
Big 12 in basketball, that's just not something that you can come in one day and go, yeah, I think we want to go ahead and just try to be good this year. Like it's not an overnight thing. Every
Right.
night, I mean, almost quote Jerome Tang here, but I'm paraphrasing on his Sports Center hit, is every single night's a bloodbath. Like you just,
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking the best teams in the Big 12. Okay, you know what? I know none of the Big 12 made it to the Final Four, and it wasn't the greatest showing in March Madness, but that is very, very surface level diagnosis of what happened in the entire season. We're talking about an Iowa State team that won the whole conference and then just plays a lights out defense. And then you're talking about Houston, who does the same, who Houston would have gone on farther if they didn't have their best player get injured at halftime. So there's just so much more that could happen in the Big 12 next year. And I think Oklahoma State's kind of going, man, what the heck? We all of a sudden basically had a little bit of a slip up over a couple of years, didn't go our way, and then all of a sudden we're last place and we're really treading water in the Big 12. Now, granted, we were second to last year, and we're tied for last place, I guess, in the record wise in conference record with West Virginia. But West Virginia is going to be good.
Yeah.
UCF doesn't look like they're going to be bad, and then you got Cincinnati, and talking about the worst four teams in the Big 12 conference, who two of those teams had winning records. So
Yeah.
it's not like I can go through the schedule and go, oh man, we're going to be great tomorrow. But there are some things here with we got two different transfers here within the past 2 weeks. And guarded at FIU, led the nation in steals. Granted, he's 5'9", but he led the nation with 100 plus steals. And then we also got a guy at Texas Tech who played in 10 games last year. They started, but he's a 6'7", undersized kind of big man who we just need depth. We need depth at the big man position. So we got now Steve Lutz going out and getting those guys too, which is something we truly do need. Besides the obvious of Houston and Kansas, and now I'm gonna also say obvious of, I mean, I could keep going here with with Texas Tech and BYU.
Baylor, Iowa State.
Yeah, I mean, so besides the obvious, but I guess I'll ask you this just straight up. Besides the obvious KU and Houston, who do you think else is contending with K-State here at kind of that, I want to say like second tier of the Big 12, right? Just because those two blue bloods are really our blue bloods now. I mean, it's tough to not say Baylor and keep going with the blue blood factor as well.
Arizona, obviously, coming in, they've won a national championship in the last 27 years, I guess. So 1997, I believe, with Lute Olson. Arizona is going to be an incredible team. They're constantly recruiting well. They're constantly attracting talent, 4 and 5 star from both high school and the portal. So I will look forward to that game every year just because they are a game that, I mean, how can you not get up for a matchup against a team like Arizona? Iowa State, man, they're good. I'm surprised TJ Otzelberger wasn't talked about more in some of these other coaching positions for teams like Kentucky. How was he not part of that conversation? I'm a little shocked by that, to be perfectly blunt with you, because you'd think a team like Arkansas or Kentucky, who's going out and getting, I would have gone over Otzelberger before I would have gone for Mark Pope. And I know that Mark Pope is a guy who went to Kentucky, but based on track record alone in the NCAA tournament, you got to look at Otzelberger first, right? So that was a little baffling to me that he wasn't part of that coaching carousel, like at all. He must have a really good agent that was able to quietly get an extension done with Jamie Pollard, but who knows about that? I would definitely solidly have Iowa State in that next tier beyond. I would say KU, Houston, and I would maybe throw Arizona in that top tier, if you will. That next tier, I would say Baylor, Iowa State, K-State. Man, I'm just trying to think. We don't have Texas anymore. We don't have Oklahoma anymore. Oklahoma State's going to be rebuilding. West Virginia is going to be rebuilding. West Virginia could be good, though. I mean, Darian DeVries is a great coach. Going back to his days at Creighton as an assistant, I used to be an intern at Creighton, and my dad coached baseball there. So I've known the Creighton baseball or basketball program for a really long time. And I've met Darian DeVries. He's an incredibly great coach, great human being, and his son is a lights out shooter. So they've got the number 2 guy in the portal with Darian DeVries' son. And I don't know how good UCF's going to be. I don't know how good Cincinnati's going to be. I mean, Baylor's obviously great. TCU is always going to be sneaky good, but also kind of middle of the pack in this current iteration of the Big 12. So I don't really know where to put them. And Texas Tech, I would definitely put in that tier, because Grant McCasland, coming from that Scott Drew coaching tree, he replicated a lot of what Tang replicated in year 1 under Tang at K-State last year with Texas Tech. I'm surprised they didn't go a little deeper in the tournament, to be honest. I'm surprised nobody else in the Big 12 went a little deeper than they did, with the exception, I think, of Houston. But I think the next tier beyond some of those teams is probably the newcomers of Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah. I just don't really know what we're going to get out of them. Tad Boyle's a good coach. He's been around the block. He knows the Big 12 from his time at Kansas. And Utah, historically not really a great program, except when they had Rick Majerus and Jack Gardner, who was a K-State head coach prior to making the move out to Utah. But they were a bubble team this year, and Arizona State made the first 4, I believe, 2 seasons ago. So I'm not quite sure. I think they were great last year. I think they were bottom half of the Pac-12 last year, in a fairly strong Pac-12. But I just don't know what we're going to get out of those teams. Tad's been kind of hit or miss at Colorado too, so I would maybe say they're in that lower tier. But yeah, it's a little bit of a verbal diarrhea answer to your question, but I think I covered most of the teams in the conference.
I mean,
BYU, what are we going to get out of BYU with their new coach?
Yeah, they're still going to be doing the run and gun shooting threes and then losing to
Oh
Oklahoma
no.
State. Who knows? I mean, there are games that I've seen Oklahoma State play in basketball that I go, okay, we should have won. Bedlam this year in Stillwater, we should have won. We lost on a buzzer beater that just does not happen in
That
college
was
basketball
brutal.
because honestly, like the timeout rules don't work the same way as the NBA. If they
No.
worked the same way where you could advance the ball to half court, then there would be more buzzer beaters in college basketball, and I'm all for that. But then again, OU dribbles it up, and then it's a three. It's like we're all going, I think he stepped out, right? Because that's what you want to believe. So besides like those games, there's also the games where it's like, how in the world do we beat BYU? They went to the tournament. Now their head coach is at Kentucky, which, like you said, I mean, he's got a little bit of something going on behind the scenes there to get that job because
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know how. I mean, if you're Kelvin Sampson, aren't you going, well, hang on a second. I could go to Kentucky, have every single thing in the entire world behind me, and play in an easier conference? Like,
Yeah.
but then again, there's a reason why Calipari didn't try to stick around and kind of
Yeah.
do one more year. Because from all intents and purposes, it seems as though he could have at least stayed for one more year. It just Kentucky was just not going to pay him more to do one more year.
Yeah.
So that's the main thing here. I also want to talk here a little bit about the other sports in the Big 12 that Arizona State's got 22 different varsity sports. Learned that last week. Great. We're not doing a men's hockey team. Oklahoma State has a men's club team
I
in
would love
hockey,
that.
but yeah, we're not doing men's hockey anytime soon. Sorry, Arizona State. But what other sport besides, we're talking a lot about basketball and football here. Do you think K-State's going to just be really good at in the Big 12 or just keep being good at in the Big 12 here as well?
I'm going to stick with basketball, but on the women's side. The women's basketball team is going to be returning most of their starters from this season, with the exception of Gabby Gregory. And Ayoka Lee's coming back for her 7th and final year of eligibility, 2 of which she was injured for, and she gets a COVID season. So she'll be getting some certificates and stuff and enjoying real senioritis as a senior for the 4th time, 3rd time, whatever it is for her. But we also just picked up one of the best available transfers on the women's side, Tulsa transfer, Poindexter, Eliza Poindexter, I believe is. I may have her first name wrong, but Poindexter's her last name. Great, I believe she was the AAC Player of the Year last year on the women's side. And you're going to be competing in a conference that's very good in women's basketball, even with the losses of Oklahoma and Texas, who were 1 and 2 this past season in the Big 12 in women's. You're going to be competing against Colorado now, who was a great team in the tournament. You'll probably remember they played Iowa and lost, but Iowa is a team that K-State beat twice in the last 2 years in women's basketball. So K-State's no slouch on the women's side. We're returning a lot of talent. We're playing in a league that's good, but we proved last year that we can compete with Baylor. We can compete with Colorado, albeit losing that game in the NCAA tournament. But that was a really close matchup for a majority of that game. And really, without some poor coaching decisions, I think that happened towards the end of that game, you are going on to play Iowa for the 4th time in that season, or 3rd time in that season in a non-conference matchup, which is kind of wild. But I really like the Big 12 in women's basketball. I don't think K-State's going to be great in baseball, to be perfectly honest with you, moving forward. They've been really good at getting some good talent in the door, but when the season plays out, it just doesn't happen for whatever reason. I think they'll be a tournament team this year. I think they're currently projected to be a 3 seed once we get to May, to NCAA tournament play and regionals, but not going to be hosting a regional. I mean, they're going to be traveling somewhere to play, but I just don't see us being in that upper echelon on the baseball side. Historically, K-State's, I believe, only won 1 regional in the history of the program and has only won 1 conference championship in the history of the program, at least in the history of the Big 12. And that was in 2012, 2013. And I just don't see it. I think they can continue to be competitive, but they're probably going to be an upper middle of the pack type of team, especially with teams like Arizona State coming in, who historically have a ton of success. Arizona State has traditionally been one of the best baseball programs of all time, I would say. Probably top 10, top 15 when we're looking at it at that value. I remember memories. I used to go to the College World Series every year, and Arizona State was typically in it when I would go to those College World Series. So Yeah, I don't think baseball is going to be great for us moving forward. I don't think it's going to be bad though. They'll be competitive. I think the conference is getting better from a baseball standpoint. Obviously, losing Texas hurts that a little bit, but losing Oklahoma isn't a huge deal. I don't think conference is going to be solid in baseball moving forward.
Yeah, I gotta say on the other hand here, I think Oklahoma State will stay being good at baseball.
Yeah,
The last podcast that I did was all about why are we not more excited about baseball? Why is there just not more excitement around the program? Um, this team basically is able to host a regional, if not a super regional, every single year, and falls short of making it all the way to Omaha, which it's kind of tough to do. I mean,
yeah,
it's not like that. Should that be expectation every single year? Well, maybe with the 8,000 seat stadium and all this money and fun towards baseball. But then again, so much stuff happens up and down that if you're hosting a regional and you're at least making the tournament every year, it's kind of a really good place to be in baseball with like a 30 to 40 man roster that they've got going now in the NCAA. So baseball, I think, will still be staying good. I think the other sport that we'll be really good at, just keep going for maybe ever, but probably just for at least a little bit, is tennis. I mean, women's tennis, we have the entire Big 12. I mean, we are the entire Big 12 entire Big 12 women's tennis team is with Oklahoma State players. I mean, if you're all Big 12, they're all orange, and it's all bright orange, not burnt. So we've got that going for us, is for sure. Men's tennis, we're not doing that bad at all. We actually, Stillwater's hosting, Oklahoma State's hosting the NCAA championship this year for tennis. So the undefeated women's team hopefully can just keep staying in town and never leave, which would be great for them. But the other sports that I think about though that I don't think will be that great at going forward is definitely men's basketball is going to take a hit. I mean, Steve Lutz can come in and have a great first year, but there's just going to be a little bit ups and downs. The NIL money difference here between schools is just there's a lot of murky waters in Oklahoma State, and maybe same everywhere. But what are we doing? Like, it just seems like there's just a disconnect of how we're going to be doing. And I don't think we're going to be bad at wrestling ever. We're Oklahoma State.
no,
We're never going to be bad. But you have probably the best wrestler of all time. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with me that just overall career wise, including the Olympics, retire as your head coach. There's going to be some adjustment. There's going to be some changes. I don't think there's going to be any disagreements there. So we'll see what happens with wrestling. I'll kind of leave it at that. I don't. The other sports I can talk about. Listen, like Oklahoma State honors our cross country and track teams. It seems like every single year during a football game for winning the Big 12 or
same here.
in the regionals or something like that, right? Yeah, I mean, when I learned that there were 4 different teams in equestrian in the Big 12, I go, "Oh, so we have a 25% chance every year of winning this thing?" Because it's like, yeah, there's just
We used to have one. They got rid of that program, but we used to have equestrian. But they replaced women's soccer with equestrian.
ah,
Yeah,
so we got both. We still have women's soccer and
very nice,
equestrian.
very
But
nice.
same point here. That there's some sports here where I can keep talking about it just for forever. But yeah, I mean, we're pretty decent in most things. I just don't think we're gonna be that bad in any one sport. But if I'm having to pick, I do think there'll be just some rockier times in wrestling and basketball than we've been used to. I don't think in basketball, suddenly it's gonna be like, hey, you know what? Yeah, lose one head coach who was incredibly good at recruiting, and then you bring in the other head coach who's known for being a really, really good head coach, but is still a newer head coach. I mean, Lutz has been a head coach now. This is gonna be his 4th year as a head coach of a team. So there's just gonna be some growing pains either way. And then women's basketball, we're all right. I mean, golf, we're always gonna be pretty darn good and decent at it. Softball, we seem to be really good all of a sudden. Big ISD as well too. So there's nothing that I'm like, oh my gosh, I think we're just absolutely not going to be able to compete or do good. And no one ever wants to say that about their own team, anyways. So maybe I'm not looking at it just completely unbiased, but I think there's a good chance that Oklahoma State is just relevant in every single sport. Just they're the team where you go in basketball, you go, ah, it would suck when we have to go to Stillwater because Gallagher was really tough to play in. But whenever they come to our place, we've got a better shot. We got a much better
Yeah,
shot. They just the talent's just we got 5 guys on the portal right now. We got 6 guys on scholarship, right now in the team. And I think 4 or 5 of them are all guards, or all at least all under 6'7". So we'll see how
yeah,
it works out here. I mean, it'll be a little bit of an uphill battle. There still is some time to hang out and try to get a little bit better, on that basketball side of things. Um, well, as we kind of wrap it up here, Bob Bowlesby, where can everyone else find you?
I am at Bob Trollsby on Twitter. I am the host of the Cocaine Willie podcast, along with my good friends, the good chef Andre Napier, who is located at Chef Andre Napier, and Fireball Matt Marchesini, who is at Matt Marchesini. You can find the show at Cocaine Willie anywhere you can find podcasts. You can find us on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram as well at Cocaine Willie. We also publish all of our episodes on YouTube. So be sure to give the show a follow. Subscribe if you're on YouTube. And if you want Cats Talk, we've got everything covered from men's and women's basketball to football and maybe a little baseball here and there, but primarily covering football, men's and women's basketball. And again, we have new guests on pretty much every week throughout the season to have a preview of the matchup for that coming week for football. So when we eventually get to the Oklahoma State K-State game, we'll certainly have you on, Cal, and we'll have some other folks on from the College Huddle who are now part of this awesome new community that we're all part of.
Yeah, would love to join for sure. Maybe at the end of it, maybe after the game's over, where one of us won't be as excited to talk to the other one. But with that being said, yeah, would love to talk some football here during the season. You can find all of the CGA Tour stuff, same type of deal here. At the CGA Tour, wherever you're listening to podcasts, TikTok, Instagram, X, Twitter, whatever we're calling it these days, and YouTube as well, of course, to help us get that subscriber count a little bit up here. So keep doing it on the podcast. And hey, you know what? Hopefully, when we record the Oklahoma State preview here, I won't be still in the office. So, with that being said, here, thanks so much for listening to the latest episode of the Big 12 Huddle on the College Huddle Network. And we'll talk to you guys again soon.